It was a rainy Tuesday morning when my brother Mark called, his voice tight with a desperation I'd never heard before. He launched straight into it, no preamble. No, how are you? Just a blunt demand that felt like a punch to the gut. He told me I needed to give him my house. I should have known then that the family I loved was about to shatter. Before I continue, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm a software engineer living in upstate New York. I've always considered myself a pretty normal person, living a pretty normal life. Until now, of course. If you're listening to my story, please leave a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. It would mean the world to me to know I'm not alone in this. Mark's demand hung in the air like a thick fog. Give him my house, the house I'd poured my heart and soul into.
The house that held the memories of my grandparents, echoing with laughter and love? Mark, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. What are you talking about? He sighed, a long, drawn-out sound filled with what I assumed was manufactured exhaustion. Sarah, Jessica and I are struggling. With the baby and everything, we can barely make ends meet. You're single, you don't need this big house. We do. My grip on the phone tightened. This isn't just a house, Mark. This is my home. It was Grandma and Grandpa's. I saved for years to renovate it. You know that. Exactly. You saved, he retorted, his voice rising. We're drowning in debt. It's family, Sarah. You should want to help your family. The guilt trip. There it was, delivered with the precision of a seasoned manipulator. I do want to help, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. But giving you my house isn't helping. It's destroying me. Have you considered a smaller place? Maybe Jessica could go back to work part-time? He scoffed. Jessica needs to be home with Lily, and smaller places are just as expensive. Look, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking you to do what's right for your family. The conversation ended with me promising to think about it. A promise I immediately regretted. I knew in my heart that I wouldn't give up my home. But I also knew Mark wouldn't give up easily, and he didn't. The phone calls became more frequent, more insistent. Jessica joined in, her voice dripping with sugary sweetness that barely concealed the underlying venom. Then came the parents. My mom and dad, who had always preached the importance of fairness and compromise, suddenly seemed to have forgotten everything they'd ever taught me. They sided with Mark, parroting his arguments about family obligation and my supposed selfishness. Sarah, darling, you have to understand, my mother cooed, her voice laced with disappointment. Mark has a baby to think about. It's different for you. Different how? I snapped, my patience finally fraying. Because I don't have a husband and child? Does that make my dreams less valid? Does it make my feelings less real? Don't be ridiculous, my father interjected, his voice stern. We're just saying, you need to be understanding. Family is the most important thing. And what about me? I cried. Am I not family anymore? Because it sure feels like you're all willing to sacrifice my happiness for Mark's convenience. The phone calls escalated into visits, the gentle persuasion morphing into blatant emotional blackmail.
My parents would arrive unannounced, their faces etched with concern, ready to launch into another lecture about my supposed lack of compassion. Jessica would coo over Lily, making sure I witnessed their picture-perfect family life, a stark contrast to my solitary existence. The pressure was relentless, suffocating. I started having trouble sleeping, my dreams filled with shadowy figures trying to pry me from my home. I lost my appetite, the joy draining from my life like water from a leaky faucet. Then came the lawsuit. I received the official papers on a Friday afternoon, a lawsuit filed by Mark, claiming that my house was part of a larger family estate and that I had unfairly claimed sole ownership. The words swam before my eyes, blurring into an incomprehensible mess. I reread the document, each sentence a fresh stab of betrayal. They were suing me.
My own brother, with the support of my parents, was suing me for the house that was rightfully mine. I called Mark, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How could you do this?" I demanded. "How could you take this so far?" He sighed, a familiar sound that now sent a wave of nausea through me. "Sarah, we didn't want to do this, but you left us no choice. We need that house." "Need? Or want?" I retorted. "There's a difference, Mark. And you're willing to lie and cheat to get what you want." He hung up. The lawsuit was a carefully orchestrated campaign of lies and manipulation. Mark and Jessica, with the unwavering support of my parents, had concocted a story about a supposed family agreement, claiming that the house was meant to be shared among all the siblings. They presented a document supposedly signed by my grandparents outlining the terms of the agreement. I knew it was a forgery. My grandparents had always been meticulous about their affairs. They would never have left something like this to chance. But proving it was another matter. Jessica, meanwhile, launched a social media offensive, painting me as a heartless, selfish recluse who is depriving a young family of a stable home. She posted pictures of Lily, her innocent face a powerful weapon in their arsenal. She wrote sob stories about their financial struggles, exaggerating their hardships and playing on the sympathies of her followers. The online harassment was relentless. I received hateful messages, vicious comments, and even death threats. People I'd never met were calling me names, accusing me of being a terrible person. I deactivated my social media accounts, but the damage was done. My reputation was tarnished, my privacy violated. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of lies and hatred. My family, the people who were supposed to love and support me, had turned against me. They were willing to destroy me to get what they wanted. Desperate, I hired a lawyer. Her name was Emily, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a reputation for winning difficult cases. She listened to my story, her expression grim, and assured me that she would do everything in her power to help me. Emily started digging, meticulously examining the evidence and interviewing witnesses. She quickly confirmed my suspicions about the forged family agreement. It was a crude imitation, riddled with inconsistencies and lacking the proper legal formalities. But proving the forgery was just the first step. We still had to counter Mark and Jessica's narrative and expose their lies. As Emily delved deeper into my family's history, she uncovered a secret, a long-buried truth that would shatter everything I thought I knew. It started with a discrepancy in my father's family history, a name I didn't recognize, a date that didn't quite add up. Emily, with her relentless determination, started pulling threads, unraveling the carefully woven tapestry of lies that had shrouded my family for decades. The truth, when it finally emerged, was both shocking and devastating. Mark wasn't my full brother. He was a half-brother, the product of an affair my mother had years before she married my father. His biological father, a wealthy businessman, had left a considerable sum of money for Mark in his will. Some of that money had been used to help my parents buy my grandparents' house years ago, the house I now called home. Mark, it turned out, knew about his biological father and the inheritance. He felt entitled to the house, believing that it was rightfully his due to his father's financial contribution. That's why he had been so insistent, so relentless in his pursuit of it. It wasn't just about financial struggles. It was about a perceived injustice, a deep-seated sense of entitlement. The forged family agreement, the social media campaign, the lawsuit, it was all part of a carefully calculated plan to pressure me into giving up my home. He weaponized my family, turning them against me, exploiting their love and loyalty for his own selfish gain. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I felt betrayed, not just by Mark, but by my parents as well. They had kept this secret from me my entire life, allowing me to believe in a false narrative of family unity and unconditional love.
I confronted my parents, demanding answers. They initially denied everything, but when I presented them with the evidence Emily had uncovered, they crumbled. They confessed to the affair, the secret inheritance, and Mark's twisted sense of entitlement. My mother sobbed, begging for forgiveness. My father remained silent, his face etched with shame. They claimed they had acted out of love, wanting to protect me from the truth. But their lies had caused irreparable damage, shattering the foundation of our family. "How could you do this to me?" I cried, my voice raw with pain. "How could you keep such a huge secret? How could you let Mark do this?" "We just wanted what was best for everyone," my mother sobbed. "Best for everyone? Or best for Mark?" I retorted. "You've always favoured him, haven't you? Even at my expense." I turned to my father, my voice trembling with anger.
And you? You just stood by and let it happen. You let your own son try to destroy me. They had no answers, no excuses that could justify their actions. Their silence was deafening. I made a decision. I would fight the lawsuit. I would expose Mark's lies and Jessica's manipulations. I would reclaim my life and my dignity. And I would cut ties with my parents and my brother. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. I couldn't forgive them, not now. Maybe not ever. The trial was a grueling ordeal. Mark and Jessica presented their case, clinging to their fabricated story about the family agreement and their financial hardships. Jessica took the stand, tears streaming down her face, portraying herself as a victim of my callous indifference. Emily, however, was prepared. She systematically dismantled their lies, exposing the inconsistencies in their testimony and presenting irrefutable evidence of the forged document. She called witnesses who testified to Mark's manipulative behavior and Jessica's penchant for exaggeration. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, my heart pounding in my chest, and told my story. I spoke of my grandparents, their love for the house, and my years of saving to renovate it. I spoke of Mark's relentless demands, Jessica's social media attacks, and my parents' betrayal. I recounted the moment I received the lawsuit, the feeling of disbelief and despair that washed over me. I described the sleepless nights, the loss of appetite, the constant anxiety that had consumed me. And then I revealed the secret of Mark's biological father and the inheritance, the truth that had been hidden for so long.
The courtroom was silent as I spoke, every eye fixed on me. When I finished, a collective gasp swept through the room. Mark and Jessica's faces were ashen. My parents sat in the back row, their heads bowed in shame. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they finally returned their verdict, the tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Sarah Miller," the foreman announced, his voice clear and resolute. A wave of relief washed over me, so intense that I almost collapsed. I had won. The truth had prevailed. The judge ordered Mark and Jessica to pay my legal fees and issued a restraining order, preventing them from contacting me or harassing me in any way. As I left the courtroom, I saw Mark and Jessica being swarmed by reporters. They looked defeated, their faces etched with anger and resentment. My parents stood nearby, their expressions a mixture of shame and regret. I didn't stop to speak to them. I simply walked away, my head held high. The aftermath of the trial was a period of intense healing and self-discovery. I sold my parents' house. The money was a small price to pay for the freedom from their judgment. I went to therapy. It took a lot of work to overcome the trauma of the past year. I still live in my grandparents' house, surrounded by their memories and filled with a sense of peace and belonging. I've rebuilt my life, piece by piece, stronger and more resilient than ever before. I no longer speak to my parents or my brother. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. I've accepted that they are no longer part of my life. It's been 3 years since the trial. I've focused on my career, my friends, and my own well-being. I've learned to trust my instincts and to prioritize my own happiness. I've started dating again. I met someone a few months ago. His name is David, and he is kind and funny and supportive. He respects my boundaries and listens to me when I talk about my past. He is helping me learn to trust again. I know that my family's actions will always leave a scar, but I refuse to let them define me. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. I am the woman who fought for her home, her dignity, and her truth, and I won. I still sometimes think about Mark, Jessica, and my parents. I wonder if they ever regret their actions. I wonder if they ever understand the damage they caused. But I no longer dwell on the past. I am focused on the future, on creating a life filled with love, joy, and purpose. And as I sit here in my grandparents' house, surrounded by their memories, I know that I am finally home.
I'm finally free. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel for more stories just like this one.